Everyone could move down closer, it would be better for Ginla. Yes. Good morning, Geshe. Tashi Dale.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Katrina. Thank you for translating for us.
Good morning.
And welcome to anyone online. And we'll begin with some motivation prayers.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one that's gone, full destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one God to bliss, nor the world's supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you are born on this earth, you pay 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies, form supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate, protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path of freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame, a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash, lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the 4 faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Nirtayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Oh, yeah. This one,
Dixongenna.
oh, didn't talk us. Chisunga Bachimbe Sungle, Conda Sibe de la Machasis, Conda Sibe de la Machas, Conda Sibe de la Machasis, Niggas, Conda Sibe de la Machas. Oh, Conda Sibe de la Machashi, Nigga, Conda Sibe de la Machashi. Tenju Tanye Chashis Sambai Vada, Tenju Tanye Chashis Sambai. Jawa Jebe Lamla Yidamba, Kendente Tawe Kimius. Kanda Sibe de la Machashi Sidi, Kibun Jingi, Lambis and Batangdoa. Kanda Sibe de la Machashi. Tenju Tanye Chashis Sambai Sidi, Kibuchungu Dan Jingi, Tumu Lam, Kibuchungu Dan Tumu Lam Jitangdoa. Tenju Tanye Chashis Sambai. Tenju Di Cindy Chibuta Dawla Maiba, Manicasura. When they chutula soba, oh, Tezulia, some good essay, danger to somebody. Jawa give a lamla yet and boss, Jibu Chimbo, Ranchibu, Koaletar was a Mayaba, Simja Tamje, Cindy Pamechembe, Simja Tamje, the new Rangi, Rala Trinshaw Mayaba, maybe Sera, and the Tamje Dondos, the Tamje Tabona Gube Shadow, Sanjay Koba, Tobachagi Samsa. Oh, the casa, Takibu Chimbu, that we change to Chanju some shade. Oh, you Takasura. Don't put the levels. Then you Kanda Sibe de la Machashes. Yo Kanda Siba Kora Nilka Soda. Hadan Milasoba, High Benji Prison Soba. College Table Soba Tesu. Benjo the Nelly Longi Prison Soba, Chagwa Meba. No. And then high Jajinda Sangbala Soba, Nelu Longi Prison Soba and Chagwa Mebas. Kanda Sibe de la Machashi, Siba Koa, the Punzo condition at Telia, Shensha Meba, Chagwa Meba, Tela Nebanjone, Tele Tarba Chagu, some Teta Tamjanibu Me, some Kogodoa, or the Kibun Jingi. Techedone, Kare Conguersna, Koa Sawane Pangu, Koa. Tata Miller Soba Kawayana Koala make you a shady Thabkhe Tila Koya Sawa Tadun Zimba Yambao Yamba round to what Zimba. Oh, T Koya Sawa Yambe. T Meba Soba is T Dusa Naround Maybe Tombani Naround maybe Tombani Toku is Tishik Doya Chick Tombati Chishash and the Tagitambu Ya did. Kanda Sibe de la Machashi Singati social.
No. So here, as De Lama Tsongkhapa has said, whoever are not attached to the pleasures of transient existence, whoever strive to make leisure and fortune worthwhile, whoever are inclined to the path pleasing to the conqueror Buddha, those fortunate ones should listen with a clear mind. So whoever is not attached to the pleasures of transient existence, this is referring to those beings of middling capacity. And then the next line where it says, whoever strive to make leisure and fortune worthwhile, this is talking about those of the common trainings of the being of small and middling capacity, who are not just thinking about this life alone, but rather strive in practices like the 16 dharmas for higher rebirths and so much, looking beyond and so forth, looking beyond just this life alone. And then the line that says, whoever are inclined to the path pleasing to the conqueror Buddha, this is referring to those beings of great capacity who are not just thinking about their own liberation alone,
own, but rather for that of all mother and father sentient beings, recognizing that there's not a single being who has not shown you great kindness, and thereby training in the attitude of bodhicitta, exchanging self-interest for the good of all sentient beings. So here, looking at this first line, again, the training of the being of middling capacity, a being here looks at the various pleasures of samsara, all of those enjoyed by, say, gods and humans, like the kinds of wealth and excellencies of even a wheel-turning monarch, is something that they see as not having any real essence. They don't have a kind of attachment to it because they see there's no substance in that. There's no real happiness. Even those kinds of pleasures enjoyed by various types of gods, deities, are not something that can really be held on to. And so recognizing that, they see there's a need to get out of samsara altogether. And in order to do that, one has to abandon the root cause of samsara, this grasping at an I, this grasping at a kind of autonomous, independent I. And in order to do that, they need to strive at the realization of emptiness of such an independent, autonomous I, recognize selflessness in order to be able to extricate themselves from this cycle of samsara. And thereby they have generated an attitude of renunciation where they're not caught up in the kind of pleasures of transient existence.
Oh yeah. Tatiya kasura. Tongbanyi siddhute, tongbanyi de samlatana ne, shenjatu zumbega che. Ani chakwa mena tawa yungu mara. Chakwa mena te wangi le sabati yungu mara. Tene kuwa kyo penche ki le sabi yo mara, sadu sabi yo mara. Ani ko rangwe da meba tosa de, shenjate chakwa meba chayo ra. Chakwa meba ine ngaru sa shabi le yo na ya, tele so tamgege, seba meza, chakwa meza, ngaru tada mili kechi kuwa kechi le dhamma dhamma busa yo na ya, tin drebu mintu yo mara. Ko nilen dudabuchi na, ko nilen so de yo na tele chuda lu de tezu mene ketu marwa. O tinashi. Siba di mena, seba chakwa di mena, tawa mena, chakda wo le sa wo me. Ti mena ni le sa tu sa ju me. Sa simba di drebu mingi mare de seba pangba ina. Ni kiaba seba kuba lebas de ko so tab ge chuda lu ge chude. Ko arwa ti meza. Ni kiaba lan tu marwa. Ya ti chi so de.
So here, emptiness, if one thinks about emptiness and realizes that, you get rid of the kind of clinging or craving, this sort of attachment and animosity that arise from that clinging to a self. And without that kind of attachment and the corresponding animosity, you will no longer create new karmas driven by those kinds of afflictions. And by getting rid of that, you will cut off renewed rebirth within samsara. And even those karmas that you have previously accumulated, by having gotten rid of this kind of clinging or craving, you won't be able to ripen those karmic seeds that you have previously accumulated. So not only are you not creating new karmas through attachment and aversion and so forth, but also without that craving, the craving and grasping, the eighth and ninth links of the 12 links of dependent origination. Although you have those seeds, there's no way for them to bring forth any kind of ripening result. You have eliminated the kind of coordinating conditions that foster those seeds to lead to their ripening results.
Oh yeah. Oh, di ko tongbanyi samlo tangkuya di ko kecha bucha yora. Karesna ngazu shenja kidu san yu di pena soso tangbu shenja kesi de soso ki yora. Ta ranglia shenja ki yora. Di ko nga samsa rang dochi ro. Nga rang dochi. Sokbo dan sem dan sorwa dan dushi dan ro. Ani sokbo na iwe ta dan chushi dan zhu dan tezu tsangma la teshin del ne. Ani ta singe chi shaaguru ma to ta di yin se rangwe ne. Nga de ta singe nga yin se tsu chuwe chi yo ma ra. Tinde chi yo na sha ne ni ta de liya shensha shukshin bu ki go ra. Ti yin de tambu de liya teni ta me ba. Ta de be gyuji mambu chi so ne. Kibu sa me chuma yi me me lu me namka me namshi ma yi sungu do. Sokbo na le yo genge. Cha da chushi da lung da u da sa ke tongba da Shibuchila Turjin Delne, Tasia de Sumbucha Deguyora. Timado Tina Chiglia, Tandiris, Kogwenal Yavatabu, Yana Pumbungan and Chilin Zugutu Yova, Yana Pumbule Shandu Yavatabuchi, Yomar, Chegina. Doctor sending him a door to the Rangwin, Yona, and it doctor sending you to you for the Yeshe. Doctor sending money to Rangwin, and a mayor was the mayor of so what I said that so I don't do she let any part on it. Tis a legacy, the dog legacy, a dog to take it to give us a good to tip us a good Kangashaguara. Oh, ta said the Shira, round and to such a do some tender some connection, just shook him with the day marwa. Oh, Tit and Dalia Tati, round with Tangi to your mare, Mambo, Chilla, Daxi Mambo, Chilla, Turgin, Delne, Nitelapa, Jitangi Tanya for Tasha, but some Shagure, some. 아니 나야 신자 숙심부터 또 총도라 야 되질라나
So, therefore, thinking about emptiness is so important because it eliminates the kind of craving, clinging that we have. We first have this kind of clinging to an I, as though there were this kind of like autonomous, independent I, somewhere within the various components of our aggregates, like our form and our feelings, our perceptions, our consciousness, and so forth, as though there was something that we could find, right, within that basis of designation. That is this thing designated, this I. But when we look at the various components, like our physical components, our blood and our bones and our flesh and so forth, our feelings, our consciousnesses, we can't find something that is that exists in the way that it appears to us, this kind of autonomous, independent I. We are alive due to the kind of functioning of all of those components, but it feels as though there is an I that is somehow one of those 5 aggregates, or somehow like within our inners, as if there was something that we could point to. But when we search for that thing designated within its basis of designation, the accumulation of all of these various causes, these components that comprise the basis of designation, we can't find that thing that is designated. There is no I there in the way that it appears to us. But does that mean that it's non-existent? Well, no, it's something that is dependent and contingent upon all of those components that comprise the basis of designation. So when we have our feelings, we can say, I feel, or when our body is sick and so forth, we can say, I'm sick. And we accumulate various karmas and so forth on the basis of those aggregates. However, there's nothing that can be found within them that is that I. And so such clinging and craving, when we remove that, we can recognize that when we understand emptiness, we can get rid of that kind of clinging and craving to an autonomous, independent I, and recognize that it is merely something designated in dependence upon this collection of parts, its basis of designation.
oh yeah tena shinta lüe barwa ngai lüe se mi da nawa da na da che da chi kanga choa ti du nyang ge chi ora o tia ko pige so so kangba da la pa da go da mi da nawa da na da che da ni na lo ge na ja ro chuma ning la sa bo te sa ma la te jin del ne ni lüe se chi or ma do tena ne 상마 영계의 류시 착신 기사의 류들이 찍을 누구 세요 말아 디인데 그 당보te nga se ne ngai lu se ni bateli ngora diinde tene ngai lu le so bate so taxi so ra kora ro ba chashe mambu ji chok bala te chen del ne ni le ba ngai lu se pa chi ta go ma to gole tene ngai lu se la kwal tene ngai lu se nga so bu na gi se kang ba na gi la ba na gi se pa ta go do wa timado 직 상마 원부터도 상마 연계 직 라원도 질 주고 줘서요 말아. 다음에도 저기 투쟁장장 초대게 된다 삼다나. 투쟁장장 초대게 제로 루스는 텔파 명지 따네. 디나레 투쟁나레 다메다 수통게 다통게 티통게 암저 나와도 줄려 투쟁원에 투저래도 수중원에 나라도 소보래도 원에서는 주주 땡기도 벤다면데 망보치체네 강가 통테 고치 제도와 어디 여러마도 디녀보데 찍여 말아 Ganga Tonga de Chik Rawan di das Chigwamaro, did Lula Soba. No Tamja Chagway you carina, you don't want Tonga, you don't want it. Dr. Segi or Pena Chagway you Shandachi over she in a yako. T Rawan do to Bachi Tonga and Chagiora. You ran winner to Bachi Tonga. T and it tell us Chasher, social simple dog. 수수 semji마다네 고마라 차베 유레신에 뛰다도 그 차기 통sam지 차샤바 대금도 아 참살이야 게 도나메게레 참살이야 lö파 다나 오 페피야 우여다 시비체레 삼기도 하셔서 그 lö파 딱바다 피기 땐데 초과라 뜨네 좀你现在嘛东半年写的工了嘛现在的穷的多多现在的差不多穷的现在的工作人员嘛了 Chagbe yuli tam mitin bada neba shige yodi ni kondu di yungu ara. Chagda ni di mena, chagda mongbe honga ni le sa yungu marwa. O di yindi, ya o di jilana. Ya kibu dringi kapsi diri sam tangu dwa.
So here, as sorry, I forgot this quote above, that a person is not earth, not water, not fire, not wind, not space, not consciousness, and not all of them. But what is a person? What person is there other than these? So here, when we think about the person, there is no autonomously, independently existent person on this basis, within this basis of designation. And so too, when it comes to something like my body, I mean, first we have this thought of I, and then we have a thought of mine. And when we look at all of the various components that comprise what we call our body, we have our various eyes and our, our flesh and our blood and our bones, and we have our ears and we have our sense of touch and all of these kinds of things. But when we look for a singular body within those parts, there's nothing that we can point to. On the basis of the collection of these various parts, we designate, oh, this is the body. But it's not as though we are able to locate that somewhere within those various parts. But yet when we say, oh, my hand hurts, we think of that hand as being part of the body, right? But the body is not that singular part. And so there isn't some sort of whole within this collection of the various atoms that comprise our body. It's really something quite miraculous to think about. We have the capacity to see and to hear and to feel and so forth, but yet there is no singular body, autonomous body that is somehow in control of all of the various parts that comprise it. But rather there is this collection of atoms, and on that basis we then designate, oh, this is the body. But there's no sort of autonomously existent body within that basis of designation. And so when we look for the thing designated, we are not able to find it within its basis of designation, but yet we can functionally speak about like my body hurts or I am sick and so forth. And so too, when we look at objects, like we see something that we designate as being pleasant, something appears pleasant to us and it seems to exist as such in and of itself, independent of our mentally labeling it. But when we really begin to examine, we can see that apart from our mentally designating it, conceptually designating it as, oh, that's pleasant, it doesn't have that kind of existence in and of itself. It becomes the object of our attachment due to that process of mental designation. And so if we can see how it is the case that these kinds of things that are pleasant or unpleasant objects don't exist in and of themselves, like always being like that, independent of our mentally labeling them, but rather we recognize that they are mentally designated upon contingent on a collection of parts, then we no longer give rise to that kind of attachment towards certain things or hatred towards other things, and we can get rid of the kinds of causes that propel us to create new karma. And when we are no longer doing that, we are able to get out of this cycle of suffering. And so this is the kind of contemplation of a being of middling capacity.
Oh yeah. Oh, then kanda sibe de la machas. Danger tanye chachir tsumba ese do ani batulia. Dawa je dan joba chu chong ngara chu top de million de sungu ara. Danger de. Chinde chibu tandalia. Saya tongye da de sa de tondal chokba cheba mayimba sungu ara. Ti chibu tondal chochu ne. Ro de atene chik. Danger Katrina chinde de tuntuwe shedo. Shala tsawa che tegba che tende mabuchi kuyora. Oh, did you guys? Tende mogo tika tende to. Tencho dene kasu ni mare tanda kase. Tenso tende. Ta tenda mi lute tabute. Ene kyawa bana tharba thopko nanda, thamje kimbe koma thopko nanda. Tanda milu digi, ene milu panche kyawa chima napsu tencho ki milu roa ngazo. Tencho ki milu di panche thopko yara. Kibu dingle ku yore, kibu chenpo ina sanje koma thopko la lui kyabar chende ku yara. Chita lui liya deva chende, shencha chende, kwa tanti nyegi yo marite. Ina ti tharba da thamje kimbe trube tendo ti ku yara. Oine kisonda tencho tenye chacho chambayis. Dewa getan jorba chu sami milindi, chindi chikwe tondaliya, pechu chene so chuba mayimba rwa. Kyawa ne kyawa, tharwa ta thamche chimba trube chido. Eni karsore, ngondo lada mi chu trube ten kebar che toya. O ti chido, eni ngondi kyu chu trule soba. Nganzo taliya rosa rwa. Tetsuya zhengkure sungora, nibade. Kata sibe de la ma shashi, tenchu tenyu shashi zhengba yise. Ti kibu chungu da, jingle koya, chimbule koya, sangma di shigdwa, ya odi shen.
And so, this next line that says, whoever strive to make leisure and fortune worthwhile, or really the human body, this precious human rebirth that we have right now, that is endowed with the 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments, this is something that we really need to recognize the value of. And here, this is something where we shouldn't just think about the kind of affairs of this life, just feeding and clothing ourselves and taking care of this life, but rather we should recognize that this is the basis upon which we can proceed to higher realizations. And so here we need to think about the kind of, I mean, in the past we have created the causes that allow us to have such a life as this, but we need to recognize that whether we wish to attain liberation or the state of omniscience, we need to continuously attain a good rebirth in order to be able to continue to strive for that goal. And so striving for it, even if you aren't striving alone to have a good rebirth, a higher rebirth in the future, someone who wants to attain liberation or to attain the state of omniscience needs birth after birth after birth, a good basis as a human or a god to be able to continue to strive for that higher goal. And so practicing the kind of 16 dharmas for higher rebirth and making this life meaningful in the sense that it is the basis upon which one can attain those higher types of goals. And so therefore this line that says whoever strive to make leisure and fortune worthwhile is really talking about the kind of essential practice that is in common for those beings of small capacity as well as middling and great capacity.
Oh yeah. No teni sumba dira. Kyawa jebe lamla yiten baase dira. Kyawa jebe lamla yiten baase. O di kasi ursne kibu chimbu lam tengi ora. Tarwa tobe chedo ra. Ngondo lami kowa rinba gyude ne tarwa tobe chedo tsongo re se. Tiga ne ranchibu tarwa tobe chedo tsongo mayimba. Sindi pame tsombe simje tamje pada mada nyela sokwa. Rangla tingshiwa ma juwa mebe se. Tamje tingshiwa tsone ra. O teni te tamje jan taba koe tongele trawa chakuyo se. O tiye chedo ne ta tanda rangla nipa mebe. Rangi teni tabda shirabliya chimba tsurin saba samdela sobal chane. Rimbe chane be tar tudu bado. Chimbe paru do chi, sebe paru do chi. O ti chene rangi kyo kuse yonde kundeji. Tabda shiru niga tar shimbe kansa. Landur jo ne tamzela toba meba jobe kansa shin yura chakuyo se. Ten yuwa chene ne semche tamzega tene nipa yonsu sobo kone chuba chata ure samne. O te tabi tanto nyenge kansa teda rabdo nyen sobo da nyen kuya kare se na. O tanda kabdi kapso. Ngado nye le niga chuba tabtumbe. Ene umaranji chawala soba tezulia. Teba da samba chene. Sanje je koma toba chagi samne. Teche tu chunyangi sam kulu seta me sambar shus ondere.
So then, whoever are inclined to the path pleasing to the conqueror Buddha, this is talking about those of great scope, those who are striving for the state of Buddhahood. And one needs to gain a good rebirth to strive for this state of liberation, but not just for oneself alone, but recognizing that all sentient beings have acted toward you with great kindness. There's not a single being who has not shown such great kindness. And so therefore, not thinking of just your own benefit and aims alone, but really thinking about the benefit of all sentient beings, being able to bring them to the state of liberation. You recognize that currently you don't have the kind of capacity to be able to do that. But if you were to become a being such as a Buddha who has eliminated all faults, who has developed all good qualities, has knowledge that is unobstructed, has this kind of nature of love and compassion, and the ability to bring benefit to sentient beings without exception, one then strives to start to try to develop those kinds of qualities, to develop each quality individually, to remove each fault, beginning now with engaging in, say, generosity that will eventually become the perfection of generosity and ethical conduct and patience and so forth, and develop oneself in the direction to be able to become a fully enlightened Buddha. And so here, someone who is striving towards that goal, striving on that path, they are doing so with learning the kinds of Dharma of how one achieves both higher rebirths and definite goodness for the goal of being able to bring all sentient beings to a state of, to that state as well. And so here, in order to, as it says in this verse, it says those fortunate ones, those who have those kinds of motivations, should listen with a clear mind. And here, the Dharma that we are listening to is this precious Garland by Nagarjuna, teaching the various stages of how to attain higher rebirths and definite goodness. And one should listen to these teachings thinking, I'm listening to this in order to be able to become a fully enlightened Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. And thereby I'm going to listen to and implement this Dharma in my own life for that purpose.
Oh yeah. 당연히 네 참도 된바. 솔로가 줍시 된바.
Mm,
Oh yeah.
Nare.
Oh yeah. Shonglong said 다들 싸워더라. shonglong 되네 톱제체를 현지체라 나오체바 오사. shonglong said 현지체라 나고체바세. 돈다고 계란을 찌지 야부 동시다치 야부 경계 정도 날래 된데서 고비 요새로시 나고chen 된데서 다이게 무슨 도차서 된가부터 솔로가 주베들도 디날 세버도 다이네 shonglong 되네 톱제지 현지체라 나오체바 오사 나고체바라. 톱진 제와데 가르스기네 톱진 제와 니베체 무슨 샹라 메버치에서 톱진 제와세데 샹다줄을 아두도 말라마도 말레든데 고부여스 샹다데 샹다 semna chambuye bol sobatende tenge mendu teg medu sero tende sero segira was tende do ya ote childo na debadlo ne de sholo ne sa se de tobar chawe se shanje chala nga parche ba sa 톱진 제와네 니베치르 무슨도 세나 가서 무슨도 세나 셔와서 셴라 메바시바서 semna chimbu도 돈도치 야 되실라나.
So here, then picking up in the text, we are on the root verse 414, where it says, then hinting is praising others' possessions so that one might obtain them. Harassment is openly deriding others in order to acquire something from them. So here, hinting is like praising others' possessions in order to, that they might give them to you as well. Like, oh, that thing you have is so nice. I could really use something like that. And so that is the kind of hinting in order to get things for yourself. And then harassment is when one sort of derides others, like, oh, I could really use something like this, but you're so miserly or you're so stingy with things. And so sort of deriding others in order to get something from them, in order to, and here the commentary essentially says the same thing, that hinting is really in order to get possessions, praising the possessions of others, like, oh, what you have is so nice, I'd like that as well. Or in order to, and then harassment is really deriding others directly, like saying, oh, you're so miserly, you're so stingy, it would be so great if I had this thing, and sort of pushing them to give that to you out of a kind of harassment, one could say.
Oh yeah. Da niebe nieba se te re do. Niebe nieba nam de ba. Ngar to ba la ngar che ba. Da niebe nieba so se de. Niema te pe che. Da te lu da ma bu yo so ra chi du nieba ke ma ro. Niebe nieba so la tab shi da mu da yung gu da. Kang ga chi bo yin gu ta le yang she de kang ga chi bo yin gu ma de. Ka niebe nieba to pene kera ngema chi ka le pe chi ro ba che so pe pen bu chu ya bu chu se re chi la na ta te ma ba yang ja to ye sam lu ye ne da ma do ku lu ra le gra she me ya bu che ba de ya bu che se go da ya chu tu chi pe ya bu chu se go da ta ne te ya ko ra tu chi che ma do chi yang ja ma la ya ta chi yang ko ya ga che ma sam tin de sam sha na ni be so de go da ma do chi dan ko 现在这不得要不穷些的，这做工人来多，工人来呢，些没得要不得，这些印度可不些上不去呢，工人的人不有那你啊，老出这个啦，工人没不些这些呢，过去老出这个嘛了，做工人来多，呀，你把南德吧，俺做把了俺去吧，我说，你把南德吧，那俺做把了俺过去吧，我天啊！ Ta tinga bu de lo so nga de re che tanga nga to ko de so da ya tin che sana.
So then next is the first half of 415, where it reads, the desire to acquire things through what has been acquired is to praise previous acquisitions. Now here, in terms of these are the 5 wrong livelihoods. It isn't sort of always the same. This can happen in various different ways, and it really is dependent upon your motivation. So here, if you are, say, desiring to acquire things through what has been acquired previously, like if you praise, oh, you gave this to me in the past, and you're looking, you're saying that in order to acquire something again in the future, then that would fall into being a kind of a wrong livelihood and a negative motivation. But if you're praising what has been given in the past just to thank that person, just to rejoice in that or praise what they have done, then that wouldn't be an example of this kind of wrong livelihood. So here, it's really dependent upon the kind of motivation that you have. This doesn't always, you know, the sort of actions can look the same, but the motivation is what determines whether or not it is something that is really a wrong livelihood. So here, when someone through sort of again, praising what has been previously acquired, or by giving a little something to someone else with the desire to obtain something, then that would fall into this wrong livelihood. And each of these 5 are counted individually to make 5 sort of faults here.
Oh yeah, that is. That's all got changa badra. Gen de shenji chulgurba. Tene khan de ba orwe. Tene khan de ba o te sigore. Kar sigore de tanda ngapchunga tune nishu sachi badre to tanga nishu sachi lepsare da. Nirchi ba ne se. Gen de ba se shenda gen de yang ne yang ya ling ye te sigora. Shenji me da se nga zungo ne se ne. Shenji me da rangjun ta le rangjun tangye shin de chung se yora. Joshi ba de adisha. Kinne se. Shenji gen se ba de yang de ne kol ne te da yang do ya ling te ne ma di ro. Shenji gen ye na ko shita ti ling ju amar to. Ta me ta di re. Ni sta ji ba de ro. Gen de ba ne. Shenji tubar juwe nyeba kaan da kaan cheba tene kaan deba yane yandu ya lamne kol nuya tanda ya ti labu den madira. Danya chi ka sura tonga la soba shaya ta kindu tinde chebe kabli ya kyan chunga ina ya kyan chunga ko tonga linga ta tinde yore Jesu siya mara ko kyan shio ni ko tonga taye tanda la kira tinde chunga suwa Tisha Wachusane, Omara. Colonel, that teacher, the Yomato. Oh, Tichilania, this one.
So
Yeah.
then next in the second half of 415, it says then, carping is constantly remarking on the mistakes that others have made. And so this is the 21st of these 57 faults that are listed out. And so like expressing again and again the faults of someone else. This is really, we shouldn't recount the faults of others. We shouldn't really be like making a tally of those. But as Atisha says, we should pay attention to our own faults, not be looking for the faults of others. So here, rather than thinking about our own faults or our own sort of mistakes, to look at what others have done wrong and repeat them, like say again and again, oh, you did this wrong, in a way that is trying to cause them harm, then this is carping. So here, saying that again and again for the purpose of creating harm in the other falls into this category. If you are saying it to someone with the motivation, oh, you need to confess this thing, you have done this wrong and you should engage in confession, and it is for the sake of benefiting them, like when they have transgressed something, or it is in the context of encouraging them to engage in confession, that is different than repeating those mistakes out of a desire to kind of cause them harm or embarrass them or something like that.
I never said that. Oh, that did it, that course. Boom, me ba, said it, boom, me ba. Oh, boom, me ba, said it, boom, me, susur, mata par, said it, susur mata par. Nele churbe, long, nele mar, the nale churbe, long, oh, said it, oh, okay, course, was in a Nistani battery to Tanga, Nistani batter, boom, me bane. Shanlan Gore Majubana, Shandy Legachever, Ran Sem Gubu Machunena, the taxi Machev shet and the taxi Machev shet, and a Nangi Semtene, Tunico, Sem Gubu Machu, Sem Miki, Sem Miki, what the Yanni and the Alone, 10 Devital Sido. Shanlan Gore Majubana, Nangle Churbe, Wangi Nangle, Nang Sebatu Nene. Yi me te wa te ya ne ya de ya long te a tengi te so so simba me ji so te ra o te chi ji o ma re so do ya te ji la na
So here, then the next comes in 416, and this is the 22nd of these faults. This one is a little bit more difficult to translate, but so it says, stupefaction is the state of being overwhelmed that comes from not thinking clearly or from illness. This is like sort of taking up a negative mind again and again, not pleasing or showing respect to others out of a kind of blindness of mind. And that can come from just not investigating oneself, not sort of being aware of what one is doing, or sort of being overwhelmed here. And that comes like taking up this kind of negative mind state again and again, sort of being unhappy oneself and making others unhappy as well.
o ya ta te chi la ta ge yo che ngen ba la chak be le lo chen ji yin se de do te ni su zhe sung ba de do ni su zhe sung ba de ta ge yo che ngen ba la chak ba le lo chen ji yin se te ka su de se na le lo ta ro chak ba ta le lo ta chun ju me ba ke wa le to me ba la so ba le te ne se se na ane ta ge yo che ngen ba la chak be 주 숨래 중앙os 레루제 소소 잘라도 제치 냐바도 졸이야 자신셔야 되시라 자신시 좀 말해서 되시라 오 레루제 개월에 준비 매매 왕게 잘라도 준비 좀 된들이야 시샤시 되되서 근데 좀 말해서 야 뒤질라나.
So then next is the second half of 416, which reads, boredom is the attachment of the lazy to their bad possessions. So here, this is the 23rd of these faults. And here, this is when, with kind of a combination of attachment to bad possessions, a laziness, and a lack of joyous effort or enthusiasm in virtue, one has this kind of clinging to one's own bad possessions, and thereby a kind of laziness. So here, this is really due to the two previous causes, which is referring to, again, having a kind of clinging towards one's own possessions, bad possessions, a laziness and a lack of enthusiasm in virtue, that one has this kind of boredom.
뭐야? 다 타된 두시 세라. 타된 두시 강세. 타된 두시 강 차단 민지 디바 오시도. 어디다 가시도네. 이슈자시 바데레도 아장가. 니시바네 세도. 다다신 타대진 두시 강 차단 묘송지 들어와서. 다다신 소소시 바세리다. ngāsi kunzu sari kawa chi sati dāni tili di rāng zō xe xe rāng zō xe di rāng di zhūye di zō xe di kānga yunggirwa dāda xe xe di dāda xe susu yundu xe xe di o di ngā zi ngā yinba di tsawa dirwa dāyu nāni xendu xe xe ra ngāsi ni kunzu xe ngānzu xe kunzu xe ni chok xe chok zhiye riba kānga tini yungu ra kunzu dāda xe ra dāyu nāni xendu xe ngā tsō xe diyo na xen tsō xe diyo sāre ani nirin lep sarwa ngā zi chok dila nye ora shida xenda chok dila tā rinwa xe sarwa ani dāda nye ngi dushi xe na chakdāng kiye ka shirab da suyo ra o di dushi xa chok ma re so ra kānga chikpa re sa sa mii bai ka zō sar ngā zō sar kukudwa chonda simchen tamze liya ngā zō zambuling mi sāma tamze sana ani digi wara chik so ne chok chi de kawa pa chi sa de ta chakdang ki shi ya ke chuk wara ani thuye de kānga yungu wara ti ngā ra zō ngui sum to thong de wara nyokta kānga tila tani yungu ba ha kuyo wate ina ti nyokta ina tunga ina randa shen tunga ina chi tunga le kawura che chen ro de wara Dende chita dāda shen se de ko pari tsuri na shiri sora pari pajo de richi ne ngazu tsujo de ne ngazu tsuri sira ngazu tsuri de sira ra pajo de pari de sira sako te yang ngazu shanda sil te de konzu ta ne ngazu pari sira konzu tsuri de wara chu pari tsuri chi na ya ngazu chu tsujo de ngazu tsuri se kunzu pari 때에서라 퍼져대 가지고 줄이 kunzu pari 시라 그래서 pari 줄이 지신 진식도 다들 신세대 삼상 가지고 땡기 와라 거기에 삼상 땡기 와라 네 kunzu서 거서 신파셔 퍼져대 주 스세 수 샤기도 세상 냠바데 강갈이 와라 신 다던다 어디 두시데 뭐 디치교면서 shense ra ngazu chikba sere abnas kaha ke ta işte oti kasore ta chuna daso semje tamje kugdo ngazu maju nangu tadan semje tamje sedera ngazu zambuling mi tamje tewa kuge tungye me ko sene yabu yongora ti member sene ta da shense oti soso chene ke ganga chakda mo so sama ge gyudi ti yin soda 타된 도시가 차단 민지 드바 오세 아니 이런 니시바네 당신 타대긴 도시에서 다다신 소수 지금도 아주 강가세 그냥 냠도리 때는 아주 강가세네 셰도가 냠도설이야 이네 야고도 심지어 탐제세거라 내물이 미 탐제세라 대원들 동에 민도 탐제세라 종이 야고도 팀이 가서 제가 오세 셰바네 니시 잡시바들아 다시 때긴 도시는 도시 차다면 숨지 집어서 더차시다 디모 강가 집어 탐제 껴 참마 탐제 연구되어 다다시 모세다른 오니주 소수 주반제 마세 다 동반이데 된댔잖아. 단디 스티치라.
So then we have next is discrimination of differences is an attitude obscured by attachment, animosity, and confusion. So here, this is the 24th of these, which is really discriminating differences. And this really begins with when we have this sense of I, then we have a sense of other, right? So we have the I that we hold as like principal, as primary. And then once we have that sense of self, we have a sense of other. So when we have that kind of thought of I over here and the other over there, we begin to get into this kind of sense of closeness of like my side, your side, this other side, of there being close and distant. And then we have those that are our enemies and those that are our friends, right? And so rather than thinking of us, like all of us who live in this world, or all of us who want to have happiness and don't want to suffer, we make it into us and them. I mean, we can see this very directly within our world. This is really the source of all of our problems. As soon as we have this thought of I and my side, and then there's an other side, we engage in all kinds of activities that create our suffering. I mean, none of us wants to suffer, but as soon as we give rise to this thought of like I, an attachment to my side, and then a kind of hatred, animosity for the other, really we are creating all of our suffering. We are creating all of our problems through that. And so we should recognize that this kind of thought of I, like us and them, is sort of like over here and over there. These are things that are contingently established. When I'm here, I think that this is here and that is over there. But the person who's over there, for them, that is here and I am there. And so it is like that, that we have these different perspectives, right? That from our side, it seems like, oh, well, this is the I, this is the important thing, and that is the other over there. But from the other perspective, that is the I. They think that I as well. They have this sense of self. And so too, this is the case for all sentient beings. So rather than seeing these as so fixed of like, oh, well, this here is I, this is the center, and that's over there, that's the other, we should recognize that that other has that same thought of I as well. They think of themselves as the sort of center of the universe. And so rather than seeing it as us and them, making these kinds of categorical distinctions, discrimination of differences, we should see like all sentient beings who live within this world, right? We talk about all mother sentient beings. Well, really, that's what we should try to recognize, that all sentient beings don't want to suffer and they want to have happiness. It doesn't, we shouldn't make these kinds of distinctions into, well, this is my side, this is us, and this is them, but rather think of all of us, right? All of us who inhabit this world, all of us who are sentient beings wishing for happiness and wishing not to suffer. As soon as we have the kind of thought of I and then other, we give rise to, as it says, attachment, animosity, and confusion. All of our attachment, all of our animosity stems from that fundamental making the discrimination of difference of like, this is my side and that's the other side. And so as it says here, that kind of, when we make this distinction into self and other, then that gives rise to all of our kind of obscuration of attachment, animosity, and confusion. And so therefore, we should try to get rid of that kind of discrimination of difference.
Oh, yeah, that question. Yila meche kanyi te sudo similar tawa me bar shesa. Then deba kanyi se chakta monso kanya yila meche ba kanyi ba te. Ke meke yila meche ba nyenga ba similar tawa me ba se ta nishutanga ba de similar tawa me ba se. Te kidigi ko langdo da keke meke se bra tikpa le tikpa yimba. Rungu marasa kewa yimba te chuku de samsa. O dinde samlu kaya meke di ne te simlia. Langdori ne de kage yung ma to chiten de yo ma ba tondu na shi de chandu ra ke wa de te bo sam che me ge se de o de de che na ne ma de re se di tikpare, di keware, di yaware, di tuware, rangla pembare, shanla nebare, se di langdo jiega samluti yokure, sungu yosera. Ya, ane karisido, chagdang muso kaa yela mecheba kaa, yinte se, kya, kemege, oma diya, kemege yela mecheba ne nyenga ba, semla tawa mebar sheto ose. Nga tu namju ina jitenbe yangda be tawa sikira, jibu chungula ya. Jitenbe yangda be tawa se. Kyu kewa che na, jibu tewa yore, di kewa res. Di miki waren, di le tene tunga yogu res, di tawa de yogu wara. O di nashin jitenbe yangda be tawa sikira. Chi susu langdor ki susu tawa de kircho de tinde chiku yore. O di chogu mare, di tikwa de mili niyogu res yara. O di pendo re, chogu res yara. Tinde tawa yogu ra. Ya, o di chiku na.
So then we have the second half of 417, which reads, the failure to examine one's mind is what is called inattention. So this is the 25th of these, which is really not thinking about or not having attentiveness to whether there is attachment, animosity, or confusion within one's own mind, or whether something is virtuous or non-virtuous. We're sort of unthinking or inattentive to that. This is almost like becoming like an animal who doesn't have an awareness of what it is that one should and shouldn't do, what is to be adopted and what is to be abandoned. So we need the kind of thought that recognizes, oh, this is a virtuous action, this is a non-virtuous action, this is good, this is bad, this is beneficial, or this is harmful. And so in that way, we can then really, by paying attention to our own mind, properly enact what is beneficial and avoid what is detrimental and so forth. And so here, when it comes to particularly a being of the small scope, but for all beings, we need a correct kind of worldly view, right? Recognizing that, oh, virtue is the cause of happiness, non-virtue is the cause of suffering. And when we have that kind of awareness and then attentiveness to what is happening within our own mind, then we will enact that, as opposed to having this kind of inattentiveness wherein you don't have a sort of sense of, oh, this is a virtue or this is a non-virtue, this is something I should do, this is something I shouldn't do. And here, this is then the 25th of these, which is inattention.
Oh yeah, tadi imbara. Tadi leson. Timbari chawa namla ne, lele kurti, nyamba kaan se risto. Oh yeah. Ta timbari chawa namla ne se, timbari chawa namla ne, lele kurti, nyamba kaan imba te ne. Oh, tadi miro se tanda ingira. Timba, jizo de china ko timba. Timbari chawa namla ne se. Lele kurti nyamba se, otelia kushabda meba ra. Tumbuche te delia o zidong de kase kukura meba o tendese ne de mare sempre ti panche sempre timbari chawa namla ne lele kurdi nyamba kansa lele wange ne telia ba kushepta zidong mache ne serwa timbari chawa namla ne lele kurdi nyamba kanyamba tene Nituba, teacher show mare sera, tatunda. Yeah, teach you know.
So here, the next, this comes in verse 418, and it is the 26th of these, and it's a little bit confusing because it's kind of the middle lines. So it says, due to being lazy about concordant activities, that is sort of not recognizing those activities that are in accordance with the Dharma, one has a loss of respect. So sorry to kind of split this up, but these two lines are being commented on as the 26th, which is really a degeneration in respect or reverence for those who are acting in ways that are according to the Dharma or that are appropriate kinds of ways. And so the loss of respect that comes out of a kind of laziness then is the 26th of these, which is, again, I could translate it as like a degeneration of respect, a loss of respect.
ya ta ka to. Ta de sa. Lamar chomde chu min de su do. Lamar chomde chu min de ke o ngeba imba de se. O de. Ti ka se do se. Lamar chawa na se ta kondo kuru ba de yende che kondo kuru ba de chi ba ina su se ra. Lamar chawa na. Chomde de je chu dan demba chawa ne. Chomde de la so ba te tu ya ne kondo kuru ne. Kushab chi ba na shi. Yo. O te te bi yende yenge shenda la ya. Tene kushab che kore se mare. Lamar che na se yo kondo kuru ba kansa ina. Chomden de ki chudan dembar chawa yende o te na shi. Chomden de la kushab che ba na shi shenda la tene kushab che kore se mare. Te tar che ba ne nyutin ba kyo nge ba imbar do to se kushab meche bar ta. Kushab meche na ne kyo nge ba imbar do se ora. Kushab cha kore se cha ma che na ne kyo nge ba imbar do se. Kushab cha ko ba ti chi teng to atanda. Lamar che ba na chomden de ki chudan dembar chawa yende se. Te tar che ba ne nyutin ba kyo nge ba imbar do to se. Tati pang kore se mare ya ich kyo na.
So then the next of these comes in the other lines of 418, which says, not treating spiritual mentors in the manner of the Blessed One. It is agreed that this makes one a negative person, or so it is asserted that that makes one a negative person. So here, yeah, the translation of this varies slightly in the English, but the way that Geshe is glossing it is to say that if someone has qualities, is worthy of our respect and reverence, they should be treated with such, right? So above it was with sort of like having respect for activities that are concordant with the Dharma. And here, if one does not sort of in the manner that the Buddha, the Bhagavan, showed respect and reverence to those who have qualities, those who are spiritual mentors, then if you don't show respect, it is asserted that that makes one a negative person. So a kind of, here again, it's a sort of lack of respect for those who have qualities, to act in a way that doesn't accord with how the Bhagavan would have treated lamas or those who are worthy of our reverence. That is asserted to make one a bad person, and that is then the 27th of these.
Ya ta ka re na. O da te se da. O shenpa kune tiba chung se da. Shensha da kune tiba nyamo da. Chung se chung chung. Deben de sa le chung o sa. Deben de sa le chung o. Ane te ka re se na. Nye je ba shenpa ne kune tiba. Shensha nyamo yinge de se ra kune tiba. Ngunjurwa yini yang se. Ngunjurwa yini yang. Shungun debe de sa le chungwa o sa. Ka shi me shi. Shenpa kune tiba chung sa ra. Shensha ane kune nyamo chung chung da ba se. Debe de sa le chungwa. Debe se te se ra. Nga zo min chi den ji kam tam te de liya. Debe de sa le chungwa se. Ane shensha kundi chung chi ina ya. Ane pangku de se me ra tanda. Keba shenpa ne kune tiba ngunjura chungun debe desha le chungwa osa o tezi tama pangku re semri ya tishto na.
So then 28th, we have coming in the first half of 419, where it says, longing is a lesser mental obstruction that comes from desirous attachment. So here, clinging or longing is a sort of manifest kind of craving, grasping that comes, that arises from a kind of lesser attachment, one could say, a smaller kind kind of desire as opposed to what will come next. But in the world, particularly in this kind of desire realm, we have various desires, and that's the sort of way in which we engage in the world. And here, having that kind of a longing is a lesser mental obstruction that comes from desirous attachment.
야, 다 가르쳤으네. 영신 더바 내중에서도 영수 신자듯이 내 영신 더바 내중에 더예로 더샤 내중에 그네 뒤바 녀모 치럽인사 아간세도스나 니르고바 영시티 니스타고바데도 영신세들이샤 영신이 영수 신바하시다 영신이 수자를 속바 유응을 세바하시 영신 더발레 중에서 시도 더발레 중에서 슈 수자 뒤를 잘 속바 대소래 더바kin 차바키 배wan게 중앙세미래 그네 뒤바 치라비에서 군디 첨부 너무 첨부를 인사하시죠 그네 뒤바 채와 랍도 주루와 예노사 다던다 더바 영신 더발 더베 연대 수저 주르샤를 소바 대졸이야 영수 신바데 방구레 신바 첨부도 방구레 너무 첨부도 방구레 세메 영신 더발레 중에 군디 군에 뛰바 채와 예서 다 대바 개도 가르쳐줬으나 일구바 영신에서 영신에서데 니스터고바레스 영신에서 지자가 자야래도 그 가르쳐버렸으나 수달라서바 유응하라 세바 유응하라 세바 더발레 중에서 유응하라 더바케베테니 녀모 군에 뛰바 치럽이에서 채와도 방구레서 신세 군에 뛰바 치럽도 줄와 이노사 야 게임바 시주나 오야
So then next is in the second half of verse 419, the obsession comes from lusting for something. It is an extreme mental obstruction. So here, the 29th out of these 57 is obsession, we could say. And so here, when we have a kind of clinging to or a craving for the five objects of our senses, forms, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and so forth. And there comes a kind of desire for those. There's a craving, a clinging to those. And out of that sort of craving and clinging, there comes to be a greater kind of wish for them, desire for them. Then that is referred to as obsession. So here again, obsession comes from lusting for something, the objects of our senses, forms, sounds, smells, taste, touch, and out of that kind of lust for them arises a sort of extreme mental obstruction, and that is it is a greater kind of again, obsession in the English kind of captures that an extreme kind of desire.
뭐야 저래서 영신제라 다들 오마들라 가르도스나 착바하셔서 착바랑게 잘라네 착변도사 덴베 이사 누구한테 착바랑게 잘라네 착바시 통해도 그 가르를 잡아서 랑게 잘라네 착변도사 덴베 이사 라나 소속에 원외된 제도 돌아 착배 인도샤 들시르세메라 착바서 착바랑게 잘라네 착변도사 덴베 이들레스그레 스티방구레 셈베다 주송바 착바네스 착바세 반시데 카레스나 라게 젤레 착베 데샤단 덴베 이도세 수수그 왕자게 제도 소리야 착바디 방구레스 신자 숙심보 다자원에 반토네 마토네 카레네 지단에 달린도나시 신자게 왕게 레강가사고라 강충중 지고야 제르도라 초르 따야르치 수수자라이네 신자 용대 용구라 신자 용내고 신자 전부 매게를 빼고 Tawari stida tento rangi rangi ne nenda lui nenda lonju nenda kanga troi nenda kanga tu tato tinda te erichi samsa shenja shukshim bichi ki mensera yaru tanya tabshi chebu jiri tatanda zawa chakba rangi zela ne chakben decha denbe yesu odi pangu de esere chakba asere tine sumjuba dira sumjuba chakba ne rangi zela chakben decha da Desa dan debe Yeshi rangi chele shakwe teta tingombar debe ane yi di kaan chuju cheche pāngi tepsi che kore sambe. Ya, jindido.
Mm. So then, 30th, we have avarice is a mental state of attachment brought about by being attached to one's possessions. So here in the Tibetan, it really just calls it attachment, but this is the kind of attachment you have to the things that you own or that are under your control. So generally, we have this kind of, we can have attachment for things that aren't ours, but this particular fault of avarice is this attachment brought about by being attached to one's own possession. So when you have things that you own and you're sort of clinging to them, that is what is being referred to here. And so this is something that is difficult to remove from its root right away, but however much we can kind of reduce the clinging, the attachment that we have towards our own possessions, whether that is like our house or our abode, our own body, our various items that we own, our friends, our family, so much will we reduce the kind of suffering that we create through the craving for through the clinging to those various things. So however much we are able to start to reduce that, instead of just allow ourselves to cling to and crave for the various possessions that we already own or sort of things that we think of as ours, this will be beneficial to us. So avarice then is a mental state of attachment brought about by being attached to one's own possessions or body or friends or a place even. So that is the 30th of these faults.
Oh yeah. Ta shenji zawandiri do. Shenji zela de se. Shenji zela shimba se. O ti pangu yora. Shenji zela shimba ne se. Mirik macha she chawo so. Ti shenji zela ya chari ma re se. Tila macha pa she u re se. Ti ka so se na. Nachu napsim se to sigara. Shenji zela shimba. Napsim ne suji ba. Ane kare suji ba marik be chakba. She chawo so. Rangi chala shenja shukshimbi che chomare, shenja che chomare, shenja pangure son, shenja chala shenja pangure son. Napsi sete shenja chala shenja tiba, shenja ne lu lonju le sob tingale chuna sam de sigora, voti pangure se, ya, bishkuna.
So then next in the second half of verse 420 is attachment to others' possessions is called unsuitable greed. So here, the 31st of these faults is unsuitable greed or attachment, wherein one has a kind of attachment to clinging to others' possessions. And this is really an attitude of covetousness, right? We shouldn't have attachment to our own pleasures, our own possessions, clinging to those things that we own. And neither should we have a kind of attitude of wanting, clinging, craving for the possessions of others, whether it is their abode, their body, their possessions, and so forth. Here, attachment to others' possessions is called unsuitable greed, where we have that kind of covetousness toward the things that others own. Like, oh, if only I could have that, if I could get that for myself. This kind of attitude of covetousness is then called unsuitable greed.
Oh yeah, badere. Karsi dosina, panja peme chakto base. Panja karesne peme la chakwa onge tonga siya deseme. Chumayi bende cha sigiri di pangure eseme. Pambar shawa peme la chane, siki tebe kulune suniba. Chumi bende cha sos. Okay. Ta peme se keba yina peme la chakwa sere. Peme ne keba la chakwa cha jiro. Oh yeah. This one.
So then next, 32nd, we have in the first half of 421, it says lusting in opposition to Dharma is to approve of attachment to women and men who should be avoided. So here again, one should abandon the kind of lusting or a desire that is in opposition to the Dharma. So for example, lusting after women, attachment to women or to men, depending upon the object of your desire, is something that is to be of abandoned. And so here, this is the 32nd of lusting in opposition to the Dharma that is to be gotten rid of.
Oh yeah. That thing do you then mention to say that.
Mm.
Tikba you then mention to, right? Tikbele you then mayba. Tesun demba mata you then mention to, sitting there concentrate. You then demba future by you then the demba is no doshin to go mara. Tikba debe consa, you then mention to, you then demba tembane, or ko you then say me abudendo doshin to mera. Tembane, and then susumba, chulchu rese, chulchu. We need to think about Mara, chulchu rese. Me and them ever me marab chinati yakurindo, susu casini sercinti yakurindo the cinema dirisura. You them ever to you that. King de you them ever. Tikwan duration to Tibet on the laying and bullet again. Nay, you them nation do you dead at them. Sure, but chuchu res, the pangu res. Tikwan debe consas. Tikwan debe consas, you them nation do you dead and dember. Dembane, Susumba, and the chuchu say, or the chuchu said the pangure. That on the you then make a concert, you then simple and dodo, today, Tabachio Maresera. Neko to a kind of tour dora, like a dora. Oh, yeah.
So then next is fraud is when one does not have good quality. One who does not have good qualities pretends to have good qualities. So here this could be sort of like fraud or hypocrisy of someone who actually might want to do something bad or has a kind of negative character. And although they don't have any sort of qualities, they pretend to have qualities. They make it seem as though they have some kind of qualities. So even when it's like sort of a negative person or they're acting in unsuitable ways, to pretend to act as though they do have qualities or to sort of go around pretending like, yes, I have this or that quality, this then is fraud. And one should abandon this kind of fraud or hypocrisy, particularly as it can lead to a greater kind of sense of pride. I mean, someone is actually sort of negative or wanting to do negative things, but they go around with an attitude like, oh yes, I have these good qualities, and that could even increase their kind of pride in themselves.
Oh, yeah. That is Shulvatimba. The same, the Bachimbushing, the same Shindu Kambade, the Bachimbo Lonjo Chalato Shida, Chashin Shukshimbu, and that is simple. The same Shindu Kambade, Choshi Pele, Dava what you need the Bachimbunico, Choshi Umara, Choshi by Umaro. The Shindu Kambate, the Bachimbu, nor Chalal Beshin, Haja Shinjachimbuti, Choshi Pelanda, Choshi Yungmaku, Kajachuna Gure Sigara, Choshi Pelanda was Sushi Pan Deshin, Shindu Kambate, the Shindu Kambate, Choshi Pele, Deba Osa. What is it, Junoya? This one. So
then next, and this is 34th in the first half of 422, great desire. So great desire is an extreme yearning that leaves behind the good fortune of contentment. So when we have this kind of great desire that is insatiable, we won't have contentment. When one wants more and more, you aren't able to experience the kind of good fortune, the wealth of contentment, but rather just continues to desire for more and more things.
yeah. 다 초시버 거래서라 초시 노르지 초인데서 초마시버네 코트네 잔네 티체요 말아 베체나요 구도 가서 잠불랭이 요새 참마탐지 미찍로 와이네 그 미찍이야 잠불랭 표소자가 참마걸로 와이네야 다다 코티 초시 지금 말이스 다다다 현다지 지르삼 제그레서도 어찌나시고 초시 깔레 맞잡세요 말이야 거시때 어디 고도 초시 제고르시데 되버지 다 레루체제 깔레 맞잡세 되세요 말아 깔레 잡소서 메 가르치고네 내가 제우라 Tichen Rebu Kari Chona, the Chokship, oh, did you do so someone? Tate de Chip, the Tandati Mother Chumazu Chess in Yodera, Toyoyane Yomaro, till allow Yoyanke Yomaro, till a coach in our college and duty, Yabuchun Samson, Kipsa de Tatara, to college Tanda Dimasu Chichimas, till allow go Missul Tindacho, Malati Chumatin, and a Kalikaro, so solia, Simbatura, or the Choshite. Nori choi yense. Choshi mena min devale tamese. Zambuling yoche tamze michik luwa ina kutanda choshi chigmara. Tatile la tingsare rawa zambuli shenda segwara. Nambu kan dro nima dawa na chi sti dragu duwa tagyara. Soso yose di pa yabu chi masu che. Tilen deva chi. Nimba chi ya. Wote chi kyona.
So here, contentment is really important. Contentment is described as being the supreme wealth, right? When we have contentment, we're truly wealthy. Whereas if you have someone who even owned like everything within the world and had all under their control, but they lacked contentment, they would still be looking for more. Like, oh, but what if I could get this? Or what if I could have that? And so here, it is important that we have that kind of sense of satiation, of contentment. And this isn't saying like to be lazy, to not work for anything, but to be content with what it is that we obtain and not always thinking like, oh, well, I need that whatever I have isn't adequate. I need this other thing. I need this other thing. And continuing to have that kind of craving for more and more. It's explained that, again, contentment is the supreme wealth because there's no limit to being's desire, right? We see there are those within this world who have great, incredible kinds of riches, might have like as much as you could possibly have within this world. And so then they start to go like, well, I need to go to other planets and get other things because I don't have enough. They don't take a good care of this planet here or the other beings in it, but then think that they'll like go to the moon or go somewhere else and get more and more and more. So we really shouldn't fall into that kind of trap, but rather recognize that contentment, and not in the sense of just being lazy and not working for anything, but being content with what we have is really the greatest wealth we can have.
Oh, yeah, Takarto. Tomdo Tani, Chine Jang Sedo. Tomdo Tani, Chine Jang. Yonde, Yanda, Den Shi, Deesa. Tomdo Tani, Chine Jang. Yonde, Yanda, Den Ba, Deva Yeshe, Dekar Sudos and Deva. Sumju Songa Ba de Doata, Banja. Songa Ba, Tomdo Nesa. Tomdo Sete, Jidoa. Tomdo Sete, Dekar Sudos, Tomdo Ne. Tani Chine Jang, Yonde, Yanda Bata. Den Shi, Parabula, Quarter was. So Yonde Yovade, Shandalba, Tani Dune, Tapsichet Sivara. Tomdo Sera, Cariso Senda, so Yonde, them by the mission that alumni. Deva, Yendachimba Hako Deva Sera. Tomdo Dani Chineja, Soso, Garchena, Tapsichene, Yendan, Dembate, Shandy Shivan Deva, Sigre. Some song about the Tomdo Ne, Dani Chineja, Yendan Yadabata, Dance, Parula Quarter Deva. Pajo de Hako Nasam, I intended day with the Hako Nasam. To some Giranga, so she Johnson or the Yabuchons, Yabuchons or the Kabuchon, Yabuchon say, Lagura. Oh, the necessary. Yeah, what is it, you know?
So then, 35th is this kind of craving approval, wanting others to know one's own qualities. So, craving approval means that thinking, I will be known as having good qualities no matter what. So, here, this kind of craving approval is really wanting to show others your own good qualities, wanting them to know them by any sort of means. Like if we have this thought of, oh, well, I have this quality, if only these other people could see it, could know it, could understand it, and sort of craving the approval or others really knowing your own qualities, this is something that we should avoid, right? This wish to have others see whatever qualities it is that we think we have. This is the kind of attitude of craving approval, and this is the 35th of these faults.
This one,
Mm.
no, this one, you send by data. Tati, Teresa, talk us. And then the social yende you but the shell argue your marcera. So yende you but the song of church, remember chitin, and the yende manga chow your hair. Those shepherd and Namsati kept a wretched in the chat and mercy order. Shangy you and the trouble is set out. Capsicola is the one chicken, but also yende trouble the mother shan that the toraching mara. Shandy you day in a married and the hookah or something. Not in the magic order. Shengi rangi mesam shengi samla kunla teshkuwas. Susu yabu cheba kewa yabati yabu yabati samla madansi gora. Mitsu yabu cheba te tili chesu yara chesu gora. Rangi mesam shengi samla kunla teshi. Ni kushenla kusheba yungure tong yungure si gora. Susu desha nani nga se susu nga jechi bu cheche kachenshi yin samsara shengira. Unechi nga jechi sheche rechi nako. Shimbali shechal tada tewa de nga jechi keyo mara. chunju shingir mato Geshe nga jechi koti o ti songda nga jechi bu me ya tanda shegora ya tinde so tiskuna.
So here, we shouldn't go around proclaiming our own good qualities. Really, we should look at others' good qualities and sort of pronounce their qualities, proclaim their good qualities. And here, it is important that we really not look to be broadcasting our own kind of qualities around. Really, we shouldn't think of the good that we have done or the good qualities that we have in this way where we want others to know or acknowledge them, but rather should look for the good in others and try to rejoice in that, praise them for that, and so forth. And so really here there are some mind training verses that express this, wherein it's sort of said that we should not be always looking, I mean, most of the time, most people we want to proclaim our own good qualities and we really see the faults of others. But instead, we should reverse that and be able to see our own faults and really proclaim the good qualities of others. And this is the way in which we cultivate respect and regard for other sentient beings. Otherwise, we basically are going to just increase our own pride. You might think that you have such great good qualities, when in fact, maybe you only know a little bit, but your desire for others to know that, it just increases your pride and not your qualities at all. So here, being able to sort of keep your own qualities secret, not trying to proclaim them to others, not trying to have them be broadcast, is actually the way in which we improve, rather than clinging to this idea that others need to know about us and just increasing our own pride.
Oh yeah. Padirita. Chu me seta. Loga lama ye chawa namla mogi bawas. O the chu me basada kasana. Loga da lama do chena susu lama teliatene kushabla sabawatinde. Lego chena mandire sada. Chu me loga lama ye chawa namla mogi bawas. Dreba kardosana. Sudin ba chu me ba sedi karsiresana. Loga da lama chawa namla mogi bawas. Tati chika susu lama yena. Chika sir kushab shegurdo. Oh. Chu shenge de sa chu di tsachimbu sonza. Di shenge de tsachimbu yesam chu chane samtawara. Chidang wo diya ya hako kudo ngazo. Chu shedi zan chi kashi chitombu kyab di chigra. Chitombu shedi chu yi chawa yesam ni kyab yormato. 소소야 통보간데 근데 삼기 매송도 제가야 대두산 미다고 삼당 그래서 까마라를 마음에 김어서 세골답기로 야셔대산 대갈레데 세골다 미다고에 삼미다반도시 당진다 가게도 들으면 게들 통보간이야 대도 최지 치와에서라 어디 최지 치와에서 대갈대거다 소소 대도 대삼고라 마도 오동아 같이 신설을 삼면지게 미치버리 가까이 버리 되어라 대인의 그 최지 최외체도 어디래 대산제 좀 된대게 시럽지 바로도 집에 도송돼 좀 된대 랑이지 대생기 트샤발라 쇼스레 좀 된대 고란 쇼스 트캡제 딜레 생기지 생기고도 생기 용해도 가르스 생기 트셔야 직범이고 생기도 리다션을 직범이고 봐라 자 최대 시에는 직범이고 봐 오요 내주다 틈바 상마 공롱다 오요 내주를 틈바 콩게 여 같은데 소자 콩 직범이고라 시시에는 땡 미즈 인고에 돈다 가르스는 다 소소 된데 시에면은 어이 시에들 전화 지그라 다들 시에 오르데 뒤인배 교생 가리면서 소소 공롱 야구지 오요 내주다 틈바 시에면은 직구해라 tenjikpa mebasa, sengiti, jirwa. O, desu, tate kawa desu. Ya, dimba.
Yani miss ne pas chepa tang, dungyang da kyang miss pao, di dosa swen.
Ya.
Kangma di so trukpa di miss pa ni.
Kasi, sholoka kaze dilepso.
Ah,
Yukita sumdo
nishu tsa
kasa.
tsungi kangma di.
Ah,
Miss ne pas chepa tang, dungyang da kyang miss pao.
ya. Oh, ya, ne, ruju bere. Nishutsa sumdi ruju re.
Ah, ya drogi
Ah, ya, desha, songa ba. Tomdo ne din dosa. Tomdo ne se.
Lare, so trukpa di.
Ah,
So trukpa di.
diwa ma de. Monsieur, oye danger, this man. Monsieur never cheba na rue.
Lare.
No, tilogiva. Monsieur never cheba na tunge, taja, Monsieur ba osore. Ta Monsieur ba se de caresana. Maritanda ngeti she te tamati kung de shegora, tanto sara, yante. Monsieur never cheba na tunge taja, Monsieur ba ose. Oya, Monsieur ba se de caresana. Never cheba na tunge taja, Monsieur ba ose. Den dreba de sutupa, sutupa de redo. Mese
Lare.
kenje neba sheba da rang la tunge jwa pa ja mese ba o sa. No de mese ba se de mese ba che gure se gure mese ba. Mese neba che shen la neba che ba da tunge da ja mese ba rang la tunge jo na mese ba. Tukwa mese ba ne shen je neba che ba mese ba. Si me ronse, ¿verdad? Se va como ese, me se ne va chebata, shengerala ne va chebata. Tungeta ya, me se pa osa, ya karse dosina. Sutu ba, me se ba ne shenge ne va chebata. Rala tunge joa, ta ya, me se pa osa. Me se ba si yo maristate, pasa seguro ese atlora. Se va monche se va seguro ese atlora que se. This one, Mr. Never. Oh, yeah, what is that? Yeah.
So here Geshe started giving commentary on the second half of verse 423, but I'll begin with the first half of non-fortitude, which is the 36th of these faults, which is the inability to bear injury and suffering. So non-fortitude is when we are really unable to bear any sort of harm that others do us, or when we encounter suffering and we are unable to bear that. So as opposed opposed to that, we need to have a kind of fortitude, a kind of ability to bear with both the harm that others do to us, as well as various sufferings that we encounter. Now, moving down to what he had been speaking about first is impropriety. So impropriety is the failure to respect what should be done with regard to preceptors and gurus. So here we need to treat those who are gurus, our teachers and preceptors and so forth, with a great deal of respect. And it's, again, something where it is really based upon their understanding of the Dharma and their ability to benefit us, that we have that kind of respect for them. So when we think about, like, for example, a teacher goes up on a high throne in order to give teachings, it's not to just venerate that one single person, but that's really symbolic of the greatness of the Dharma itself, right? And so often when teachers get up on that throne, they remind themselves of impermanence by saying the verse, a star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. And they snap their fingers, reminding themselves of impermanence and not getting sort of caught up in this self-image, but rather recognizing the essence of the Dharma, and the greatness of the Dharma is why they are sitting up on that high kind of throne. And so actually there is a story, the Buddha, the Bhagavan, when teaching like the Heart Sutra and so forth, was on a lion throne. And the reason that we talk about this lion throne, this throne supported by lions, is in the same way that lions are the kind of creature that are feared by others in the jungle, and they themselves are sort of fearless. They don't have a predator who is going to get them. The Buddha is fearless in the sense that his teachings utterly accord with reality. He can speak without any sort of fear of there being a contradiction or something that it doesn't accord with reality, because he has realized phenomena just as they are. There is no need to be afraid. And so the reason that that throne is upheld by lions is out of that sense of fearlessness, representing the kind of fearlessness of the Buddha and the fact that the Buddha's teachings accord with reality. They're not, he's not teaching anything that doesn't accord with reality. And so here, that's a little bit of a digression, but impropriety is not respecting those kinds of beings who deserve our respect. And we should also recognize that they sit up on these thrones, the lion throne symbolizing that kind of fearlessness, but they do so out of the greatness of the Dharma, not as a kind of individual veneration to that particular person.
That's two said two said the Karsurus. Lobel Lama is Chavanam Lamagu, but let's see me Basigorese. Oh, the Bangoresigora. Two Lobel Lama is Chavanam Lamagu Baose. But then Deba Cardosena. Timber two me bane Lobel da Lame Chavanamla Magu Baose, or Lobel da Lame Chawa. Lama la Kushepse Kugala Soba. Oh, it is a Lama and Lame changing the Lama changing the Dumble Soba. Oh, it is only a Kushepse Kugala. Yeah, just to.
So here again, impropriety is the failure to respect what should be done with regard to preceptors and gurus. So here one should act in a respectful kind of manner with respect to the guru and the preceptors and so forth. One should treat one's guru with respect, particularly when one has entered into a kind of relationship with an authentic guru, and one is an authentic, a proper kind of a student as well.
Oh, yeah. Padira, Kalo Metewa, Kalo Tewa Mayikan, Shooting Sigma, Maguba Osa, or Takalo Tewa Mayiba, Kalo Metewa, that is Shojeba, Kalo Tewa Mayimba, the Karula Sigresana, Kala Chu Tumbe, Ripper, Sigmawa. Sigmawa na Tiaro, Seso Makubas. Kalo Metos, Mindership, Doada Tindenalia, Karachi Chedwa, Chichi, Don Shako, the Sarah, Madrid, the Sarah Lamna, ngā lā mōgō se, ngā lā yāwa ina tū ina kēka lā mōgō sāni kēcha kura mañyaba te sigora, kalo me te wā sigora. O tende sigyo ma se, kalo te wā mañi kāng se, kalo te wā mañi kāng chūten sigma, chūten tēmbe labze kiabna kumbha kuiba se, kēli ma se, kēcha mambu ma se ngā hā kumbha se sigora ku. No, ane, te sumchu soje ba tere da. Sumchu soje ba kalo dewa mayi ba ne, kaala chö tön be rikwari sigma ya, chö dan tümba se ne, labze kyabze kiran ti ma diri ti chikyo ma se laba ina yang se ura, chö dan tümba laba ina yang, te yang ro, yabu ina da, tuja ina da, ngala kechu mamma she se ura, hama ko se ura, ke kuru lingyo mara, te yang ro, she soje, ma kuiba se batala se ura, kalu me te wase. O te chirungu ma re se ura, ya te kyuna.
So then next, 38th, and this comes in the first half of 424, not heeding instructions means that one does not take seriously statements that accord with the Dharma. So whatever sort of advice, words that are proper, that accord with the Dharma that one might receive, to sort of not have respect for them, not really listen to them, like whether it's virtue or to saying non-virtue, or oh, you should do this, you shouldn't do this. When you have this kind of failure to heed instructions, meaning to take seriously those kinds of statements that accord with the Dharma, to not accept that or to disrespect those kinds of instructions here are what is meant by not heeding instructions, the 38th of these faults.
자, 그거가서 니도 당제 남도 내 세들다. 니도 당제 남도 내 니도 라잠 차바오세. 대가르스도서는 수고바 니도 당제 남도오세. 남도 내세. 대가르스도서는 니도 라잠베 차바오세. 니도 인베천에 고신차 용거라. 어til리시거레시거라. 차바오세. 게다 아까서래. 근데 랍도 중화라지네 고 김내 김매버 랍도 좋은데 김기 시라티를 신자 매버시 구요라. 다이네 고 배신 가서 강충주 신자 충주 제구요라. 지단 니도다 데 제구도 파마하시니 니도스 잠바다 싸워지다 곰데 파마내시니 니도 내시 파 공부시기도. 당님 공대사 민호 마신 것이 맹게도서 내 주 공부를 시기도. 가라스니 때 곰래라 또 파니어여서 저이 티비티파 정말 디네식 교황아마 신저 티셔를 티셔 텐데스데 직벌에 소야려 텐데 고다 다 신자로 그 말세 신자다 또 시켜봐야지라 야 임베셔 니도 당제 남도네 니도 라잠 차고오세 숨지 쏘고 발랩사르다 그 가시도스네 니도 단제 남도네 니도라 잠배 잠보치에서 지대나 시그라 차고하데 또다 신자들 니도 임베산에 신자데 어디 점으로 하래 sember 다단단데 저 랍도 중화다 전주 선바트도 세워라 가가 식벌에 쏘고요라 니도 이내다 가가 이내다 걸리걸리 니도 단다 파마단다 니도 드네야 안도네 참마 식벌에 차고요라 들 민세기 고야 신자체는 지금 말했어야 된다라 야 this is good.
So then 39th here, coming in the second half of verse 424, reads, conceptuality concerning one's relatives is an attachment that arises through fondness for one's relatives. So here, out of their being our relatives, we can have a kind of attachment to those that are our relatives, a kind of clinging for them, a sort of bias towards them, we could say. So when one becomes a renunciate or takes ordination, you're sort of leaving behind that kind of householder life, right? But this doesn't mean that you should just disregard your relatives entirely. We also need to have a kind of regard and respect for our relatives, even if we're people who have left that kind of householder life behind. But really, it's important to generate a kind of equanimity towards all sentient beings, right? So often one begins begins this process by thinking about those that are strangers, because we don't want to sort of mix it with the kind of attachment that we have towards our relatives, but come to see all with a kind of love and compassion. So here it isn't as though we should have no regard or no thought of those who are our relatives, but having this sort of bias, this kind of clinging to them just because they are your relatives, is something that should be eliminated, and really coming to see all as being like that, right? Feel that kind of closeness and affinity and affection for all sentient beings is what one is training in. And of course, this is going to be slightly different for those who are ordained and who have completely left behind the kind of householder life, and those that are still within it. But it's important that one not have this sort of bias because of someone being one's relative.
Oh yeah. That was the lesson. Tishin yu se dandunes. Tishin yu le se ba se chidwa. Tishin yu se dandune. Dela yende joba osa. Yu le se be wange yu di yende joba se chidwa. Jeba na kandosne shichuba. Tanga shichuba le se da. Deshin do yu le se ba ne. Te tobe dando yu ngenba la ya. Te yende joba so timbre. Ta yu che tele chakbe wange yu ngenba la ya te yende joba. O ti rong ma re se be yu le se be wange yu ngenba la yende joba. Jushin yu se te tendo te yende joba te rong ma re se be yu se ba se. Shi joba te shin do yu le se ba ne te tobe tendo yu ngenba la ya yende joba yu ngenba re chi na ya. Te rang le ra ye to da ya. Ene te yende joba te rong ma re se. Yeah, what is going on?
So here then next we have in this list the 40th, which here in this translation reads, and this is the first half of verse 425, likewise to be attached to one's country is to overstate its good qualities. Now here this might be better read as likewise to be attached to one's various objects, to have a kind of clinging to various objects with the wish to obtain them, overstating their qualities. Here is really the sort of a craving for objects. Now, this can sometimes mean country as well. However, in the sense that Gyaltsabje's commentary glosses it as sort of to have a bad object and wishing to obtain that, to overstate its qualities. I don't know, we might wish to obtain a country as well. But I think maybe in this, at least the way he's reading it, would be better to see it as an object that is maybe negative or bad, but we overstate, we express its qualities out of a kind of clinging for that.
Yeah, oh, that is. Tishin michi tokwa kansa Tishin do michi we to chiwa, michi we tokwa. Chigma re samsang. Tishin michi tokwa kan. Chiwen jigba, jigbe, mendokwa obse. Chiwen jigbe mendokwa obse. Oh, tirisa. Tade karsi dosana. Tishin michi tokwa kansa. Michi we tokwa. Shigma re samsa, tanda shigma re sam, tanda lo mambo yosam. Oh, tindesimbe. Tishin michi tokwa kan, chiwen jigbe, mendokwa osa. Dan dreba karidosana. Tishin do, shichik bane, michi we tokwa ne kan, chiwe jigbe, mendokwa osa. Tishin michi we tokwa kan, chiwe jigbe, mendokwa osa. Tishin michi we tokwa kan, chiwe jigbe, mendokwa. Michi sabe namdo yonko ara, te samtangara, tanda nanda me sam. Karasa ko chiwa le shigi yuzati, nanda me shigma re samsate. Kaden Dreba in a Cardosne, Teshindo, Tishin Nidu, Teshindo, Shichikwa, Tishin Shichikwa, Teshindo, Shichikwane, Michiwe Togwanesa, Michiwe Togwane, Gan Chiwen Jibe, Mendoba Osa. Tashik Mare Samsa Yabu, Tegi Mara, Ted, Lave Kabuyo Mara. Te karesne ko shiva le jigi ware sera jisani te yungure sera tishin mishi tokwa ka shive jikwe me tokwa was shigma res tengire shiva te tende yo marite ina shigma res samgi ware sera te karesne ko shiva le jigi ware sera tratune ko kiranta shigri tasine tratune kagmara jopa shigri tasine tratune kagmara o tin trebatina kardosne Geshe, Geshe nido shichiba ne misiwe toba ka chiwe jigbe mendoba was. Tada chiwe samlute gogu ora shuna shichana. O tende yo mare san damsi ngeba do chigre san ta che uro chitante ko. Tende yo mare samsa ko ro ti no ko to se shenja churu do ura. Pe tu tautu tengen suli samlu kona ni shenja ko tautu tengen ri na tin rige wara tu tautu tengen ni tautu te tabshi che wara lo kaje te ne ti chu tabshi che wara o tin du ka sure shi mi shi tokwa ka ti mi shi we tokwa ti yongur ma de chigre sam chiwa de tene ko ten ko ra ya ten ko ra kya kasa dangi chu nyamsimba kaala ngeba yochoba teni jikba yongdangde chidala ya kaala chikchara tambo tabade shigre siddha ko tosi shigra namje kezi shele kabu chikmadwa takba re she denge tozo tisi yo mare chiwa metaba she de yore paru chile chiwa mune sang bhagu che tako labde videvine kashimato kaala chu nyamdu semba ti tambo taba tatuna kabu de yo mara tina te samlu ngeba tu tangu re sigora. Ti samlu te takwa re si yobe yina sigora, kaala chiwa nyam simba te kaala ngeba yobe. Teni jikba yongda de chida laika, te parujil ko me jikba chandu re. Karasana shina ko shiete shigira ko, tila ka shira yorimbu ke mara. Ti chima dili doya dili shegu re sere, chiwa yina. Shiwa la shira shege yo mara, shene penge yo mara. Ta shiye de jikba de kyewa shi sawe chele dosa kyewa dili jiku re sera. Tili cheye yora, tabshi cheye yora. Iwa tisi wara, kaala chiwa nyamsimba, kaala ngeba yojiba. Teni jikba yongdande, baru chili shena menge chandu ko. Kyewa chima dwe, tikba paa kyewa trup suishindu chewe ina. Da shina kyewa chima tete, kyewa yagu chili taa chiwa samgira so, ishi nyigira. Tishinta shiye chanjali shiye ke wa marwa. Shira ke yunri mbucha marwa ko. Tile kasa, personality yungda. Kewe kawe tunge de maa yes, te yurungu nyangu res, tembari rwa. Shiwa tengu shichi nasa tozira che mato shira ke undro mandro de kama kasha de ya chozo chikse te mato karine yung mara. Te indu ko chiwa tengu yore. Chiwa tena, midabwa tena tsendele shenja chondu re. Kiwa chimandro sa de yagu yunga tenda tikpa paa kiwa tuwe de shuk cheru re. Tintosu paru jiri ko chiwa la jiri mara. Nanzu chiwa rabdi shiwa la kaase er chiwa. Shiwa la kaase. Kaase ni mesiri sara ra. Kaase nyoba mewa chagiri sara. Ta diri kai chindali yata ji che, chiwa yata ji che, samsan nyoba mewa ngurisi. Ribari sum shekdwa. Ya wadi jilam na. This one.
So, then Next, in the second half of 425 is the 41st of these, which is the notion that one will not die means that one is not concerned with death due to fearing it. So here to have the kind of thought like, oh, I'm not going to die. Like I still have a long time left. I have many years left to go, and just not consider it, not think about it, and think like, oh, no worries. I'm fine. I don't need to, I'm not going to die. I'm going to be here for a long time. This is the 41st of these faults, the notion that one will not die. So here, when it comes to thinking about death, we don't initially like to sort of hear about it, right? Just upon hearing the words, some people feel this kind of fear, and they're adverse to hearing about death, and just sort of recognizing the reality that we are all facing. However, if one initially has that kind of fear, but actually listens about death and recognizes that, well, you have to die. I mean, we are all going to have to pass away. And so thinking about death and recognizing that we don't have an infinite amount of time here, we're not permanent. And although we are going to die, the time of death is uncertain. This helps to lessen our attachment. I mean, if we were going to remain forever, then we would need to think about that and how we're going to provide for ourselves. But rather than that, we need to recognize that no, we are going to face death. We are going to have to face death. And really, it's something that we need to prepare for. So here, upon initially hearing the teachings on death and impermanence, there may be some discomfort that arises. But really, once one gets past that, and there's a verse here that goes along with it, that once you come to a kind of acceptance of the fact that, yes, you are going to die, but there is something that you can do about what will come in the future, right? Really, we need to recognize that death itself is not what is scary, but what comes after death. We are going to face a future life, and we need to think about what we are creating in terms of the causes for that future life. And we actually have right now the power to create those sorts of causes. And so if we're doing the right things, if we're applying ourselves to virtue, that means that we can get to a place where actually we don't have to fear dying itself or fear what comes after we die, because we have made the kinds of right plans. We have actually a sort of certainty that we are going to be able to secure ourselves a good rebirth in what comes in the future. And so it's actually when we begin to really think about this, getting over our maybe initial discomfort or dislike of hearing about death and impermanence, we can recognize that actually death is not something that we need to fear so much. Death is of a much shorter duration than, say, aging. When we look at the text, it's like aging is a much longer period of prolonged suffering. That's something maybe we should really fear. But death is something that isn't that long of a process. I mean, there might be a few minutes where our breath is ending and so forth. And we recall death, we think about death so that we prepare for our future. We begin to think about where it is that we are going to go afterwards, and creating the sorts of causes that will lead us to a good rebirth in the future. And so really, by first hearing about death and impermanence, and then accepting that yes, we are going to die, as well as recognizing that, well, right now I have the ability to create good causes, we can get to a place where we don't fear death at all. We actually have a kind of confidence in where we will go. The texts talk as well about sort of three different levels of a practitioner when it comes to the time of death. There are some that are able to face death with joy. They actually are so certain about what good is going to come afterwards that they don't have any kind of trepidation, but actually feel a kind of joy at that. There are those who are able to face it without any sort of pain or suffering. They again have this certainty of what will come. And then there are those who are able to face it without any regret, knowing that they have practiced well throughout their life. They don't feel this sense of loss or regret because they know that they used their time well. So here, thinking about death and impermanence is not to scare us, but rather is to help us to recognize that we have right now in our hands the ability to determine what will happen after we die.
뭐야? 가데르다. 제 남르다. 댄토니사. 제수 남르기 또 봐서래도. 제 남르다 댄토니사. Jesu number beto was. Tani Chine, Shendakis, Soso de Karchena Tapsichene, Shendaki, Mishendakis, were. You then dog number is all call you nation Titi Yabuchi Hakone, Situng Children, a Lamarchiva, all call you then message and Kome and then the Dengri Samsachik, Tatunda, Chitung Repsirana, some Lamarchiva, Jurinyamba Osa. Jesu Namri Gitowa Nisa, Jesu Namri Gitowa, the Karel Sigresina, Jesu Namri Gitowa Sone, Shiniba, Shiniba di Sigura, Shiniba, Jesu Namri Dantembe. Rang ki yode shenji riban debe. Rang le yode to su ne tiri shendag ha kona sam riban debe. Tokwa del sigre sere. Rang yode de shenji ha koni rang le chitong debe siya wuchuna samche. Tokwa ni tangi chine ja. Ti samlu karchen kori tangi chine ja. Shendagi yode dogbe namba yesu o ko yode chembure sam. Tinte samne. Chitari chane lama chiba jesu pondu ya kudne. Tinte chungna sam o tinte samutile. Sigo resi. Jesu namri ki namdo. Jesu namri ki toba. O tinte charung ma resi. O tisungdo. Ya digdwe.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So then here we get to the third kind of section of these 57 faults, with begins with proclaiming one's own good qualities. Now here this comes in verse 426, where it says, conceptuality in connection with recognition is thinking, somehow I must make people take me as their guru by virtue of my excellent qualities. So here, this kind of attitude of, conceptuality in connection with recognition, of wanting to be recognized by others. This 42nd of these faults is really this sense of like, I need others to know my qualities, others to recognize and know my qualities, maybe even take me as their guru. And so here, this sort of thought, again, the commentary largely mirrors the root verse itself of like this thought of somehow I must make people take me as their guru by virtue of my excellent qualities. So out of this sort of thought, like I want others to think well of me. I have all of these good qualities, and so therefore they should definitely think of me as being like their guru. This is the kind of 42nd of these faults, which is a kind of conceptuality in connection with recognition, of wanting to be recognized or be taken as like a guru by others.
Oh yeah. Well, try to that is oh, then it is that is
So we maybe only got through a little bit, Geshe is saying, but we will have to leave it there because of the time for today.
Thank you, Genla. Tuchache, beautiful verses to think about. And thank you, Katrina, for your clear translations. We'll finish with some dedication prayers.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Iram Gururana Mandalakam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha. that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Recording stop.